Welcome to Chapter 4, Preparatory Exercises with the Sword. As a reminder, I, Ken, on the left will be playing the part of Fencer A, or the coach. Brian, on the right, will be Fencer B, or the student. Always salute before beginning practice and be sure to wear all protective gear. Because of the weight and stiffness of rapier simulators, it's important to learn how to absorb the force so as not to harm one's partner. The drill is simply this. Fencer B extends their arm and walks towards Fencer A until their point makes contact. They allow the blade to bend slightly as they move forwards, taking the recoil in their elbow as the pressure becomes heavier, and they continue to walk around Fencer A. Fencer B should do this with their hand both pronated and supinated. Engagement, or stringery in Italian, is a fundamental rapier action. The basic assumption in rapier fencing is that both fencers begin on guard at a distance and then approach, each seeking to threaten the adversary by dominating the opposing blade with mechanical advantage while remaining safe from an attack by maintaining a closed line. This is achieved by positioning one's blade with slightly more of one's own steel against slightly less of the adversary's steel while maintaining that all-important closed line. The adversary cannot make a direct attack, they must make a cavazione, or disengagement, and thus give a tempo. Fencer A can invite by merely lifting their blade. If their point is to Fencer B's inside, Fencer B makes stringery in fourth. If on Fencer B's outside, they make stringery in third. Note that this will be different for left and right-handed fencers. Note that Fencer B should lead with their point, reaching forwards to find Fencer A's blade. Note that strong contact with the adversary's blade is unnecessary. In fact, Capoferro cautions us not to touch the adversary's blade at all, and indeed, it's not necessary so long as one maintains a properly closed line. Giganti, on the other hand, says that one may touch it lightly. If you find yourself with someone dominating your blade, you naturally want to escape that tight spot and establish your own blade domination. In other words, make a cavazione. I am going to distinguish between two different sorts of cavaziones. One doing what the rapier masters would advise and extending, which would be, in modern terminology, a disengagement, and one that merely frees the blade, which in modern terminology would be a change of engagement. We'll be learning the change of engagement first, since it will enable us to make the disengagement with more facility later. No matter how it's made, whether on the inside or the outside, it's with a V motion dipping the point, not a circular motion of the wrist. Watch carefully how Brian and I do this drill. If I'm in fourth and he's in third and I go around in fourth, he's going to go circle 3. If I give him a pressure on his outside, he's going to dip his point and find me again in fourth. I'm now in third, and if I make a circle 3, he's going to make a circle 4. If, however, I give him a pressure on his inside, going back to third, then he's going to change back to third. There should be a click-click sound as you do this, because neither of you should be evading the other's blade, rather should be going off tactile give and take. In the same way, it's not a beat, but rather an engagement, so the contact should not be harsh. Here's the exercise from over my shoulder as the coach. I'm in fourth. As I circle, Brian goes circle 3. I give him a pressure, and he changes to fourth, and now circle fourth as I circle in third. I give him a pressure to my fourth, and he changes back to third. And now, of course, he's circling in 3. Note that, of course, inside and outside and third and fourth will be reversed if you're left and right-handed. That's it for new blade work for this chapter. Now we're going to concentrate on the all-important skill of keeping distance. First, Brian is going to maintain his distance foible to foible with me, which puts me, of course, within his lunge distance. Brian can only use advances and retreats, whereas I, as the coach, am using cheating coaching footwork and crossovers. Brian keeps his distance, trying to keep the swords at the same length of crossing. If I change direction and tempo very often, this can be very challenging indeed for him. To make the exercise even more challenging, and to add a blade work and coordination component, we could add the change of engagement so that Brian has to do his changes of engagement while keeping his distance from me. The point of the next exercise is simply to learn how to lunge against a live target. First, I invite Brian to take his lunge distance. Upon my lowering my blade, Brian extends out and lunges to the target. He then recovers, making sure to guard my blade. I can use a fixing action to adjust his posture or his mechanics. Make sure to vary the tempo of the cues so the drill does not become mechanical. At this point, we can incorporate changing distance into our exercises. As before, we begin by my inviting Brian to take his lunge distance. However, there's some changes this time. If I simply lower, then he can lunge as before, without changing his distance. If I lower and step forwards, then he only extends. If I lower and step back, then he must take an advance and a lunge. Of course, there's probably time to do another action in the tempo of his advance, but we'll worry about that later. Do this serially until it becomes automatic for Fencer B, and then he can begin randomizing the actions so that they constantly have to adjust to changing distance. To build strength in Fencer B, and also the ability to react to changing circumstances, we can step back after they've already hit us. This will call for a redoublement, keeping the blade on Fencer A's chest. The Russian drill is an excellent strength and conditioning exercise. Fencer A has Fencer B place their point on their chest, and then makes them advance and retreat while keeping this distance. Fencer A can cue for the lunge by pointing at Fencer B and having them back up, and then cue for the redoublement. Fencer B recovers forwards and resumes keeping distance. Fencer A has them back off to their lunge distance, and then lunge, and then redouble. This can be very, very hard when you start linking multiple actions together. From here, Brian and I can do a sort of training bout in which we're not allowed to use any blade work whatsoever. All we can use is our footwork and playing with distance to try to set up attacks and evade the adversary's attack. This is a really good way to put these distance drills into practice and to learn how to keep distance against opponents of different heights. There are many strategies which you can discover for yourself or by consulting any modern épée book. Be sure to acknowledge hits and reset after every touch. The last exercise in this chapter is practicing cutting. Here, Brian is extending and cutting to the head with double taps to make his cuts light, and of course also to the leg. This is critical for understanding your cutting distance and also how to make the most efficient cuts. Once you've mastered these skills, you can move on to Chapter 5.